morning, it's May 13th, and this is To My Liberal Friends. Well, Joe Biden went to Wisconsin last week to campaign in a swing state that he desperately needs to win. Right now, the polling in Wisconsin shows the race between Biden and Trump is very close, with some polls showing one candidate ahead and another showing the other leading. And it seems to go back and forth depending on the news of the week. Eventually, the questions asked of the president turned to the economy, and Biden bristled at any suggestion that his Bidenomics program was not working. He claimed that his administration, meaning himself, had turned everything around and the U.S. economy was the best in the world. He then questioned the polling data on the economy, saying they had it all wrong. And that would be news to the latest Bloomberg poll. Respondents were asked what they saw in issues going to the end of the year. When asked about inflation, 55% said it was getting worse, with only 20% saying it was getting better. Not sure who those 20% were, since inflation was ticking upward the last couple of months. On the overall economy, 51% said it was getting worse, and that same 20% said it was getting better. More importantly, over 75% of respondents say that Biden is responsible for the poor economy, and about 50% of them said he was very responsible. So Biden can say what he wants about the perception of the public, read that voters think the economy is bad and that he is to blame. Even Democrats are starting to get upset and realize that Biden cannot keep ignoring the facts. David Axelrod, former Barack Obama advisor, made it clear whatever Biden may think, even if it might be true, he and his White House team need to realize the public is not buying it. They're not buying it because they go to the grocery store and they pull up to the gas pump and they get sticker shock each and every day. But Biden's ego seems to prevent him from admitting that anything is his fault. Everything has to be blamed on someone else, and his usual foil is his opponent, Donald Trump. Now, here are some facts that Biden ignores and wants you to ignore as well. And numbers don't lie no matter how you spin them. If you go back over the past 8 presidents, we get an idea of how inflation has been and what it averaged during their presidency. Under Jimmy Carter, inflation averaged 10.5%. Reagan brought it down to 5.1%. George H.W. Bush was at 4.2%. Clinton got it down to 2.5%. George W. Bush got it to 2.2%, Obama to 1.5%, and Trump at 1.9%. And finally we come to Biden, and inflation has averaged 5.7% during his term in office. So if you listen to those numbers, what you saw was inflation falling after Carter in each presidential term. It ticked up a little bit under Trump, but nothing that would catch the eye of both the Federal Reserve or consumers. Biden keeps telling voters that inflation has fallen on his watch to 3.5% from that peak. But voters remember how low inflation was for 40 years before Biden took office and went on his historic spending spree. Americans can also see that prices start falling back to where they were when Mr. Trump was president. They know their average real earnings have declined since Biden took office. The Biden camp has taken to berating the media for not promoting his economy more. Some of them are taking the bait and beginning to publish favorable stories about the economy in a hope to bring more support among voters. NPR, and this is the public-funded media outlet that's come under fire for a strong liberal bias, has led the way with multiple stories on how the economy is growing and that wages are increasing. But every time they publish such a story, we see gas prices move upward and inflation tick a bit higher, which makes the public even more wary of Biden's claims. To show you how NPR has a bias, I will quote from a story shortly after the State of the Union. It's laughable. Quote, employers added more than twice as many jobs during Biden's first 3 years in office as they did during the comparable period under President Donald Trump. The comparison looks worse for Trump if you count his final year in office, when the pandemic threw millions of people out of work. Trump was the only president since Herbert Hoover to leave the White House with fewer jobs in the U.S. than when he took office. End quote. That's their story. But they ignore the fact that the pandemic forced many job losses, and when they eventually came back, Biden claims he created them. And when Biden was pressed on this in a recent interview on CNN, he became visibly agitated. Now, the Washington Post has chimed in with stories about how the economy is better. But the voters have not been convinced, and this will force the Democrats to go to scare tactics in the end. They will have to start talking about social issues and leave the economy alone. But he does this at his own peril, because while voters may have strong feelings about certain social issues, poll after poll says it's inflation and the economy that are 2 most important issues to them, followed by border security and immigration. And all of those spell bad news for Joe Biden. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.